I'm writing this because I don't know how much longer we can hold on. 3 generations of my family have worked this land, and now we're seriously talking about walking away from it all. Not because of money problems or bad crops or anything that makes sense. We're thinking about abandoning our home, our heritage, everything we've built, because something in the woods won't leave us alone, something that shouldn't exist. This isn't one of those stories where someone sees Bigfoot once and spends the rest of their life wondering if it was real. This is an ongoing nightmare that's been getting progressively worse for 2 years straight. 2 years of living in constant fear, 2 years of watching our dreams slowly turn into something we can't escape from. The worst part? We have kids. 2 beautiful young kids who used to love this place. They'd spend hours outside, playing in the yard, exploring the property, helping with the animals. Now they're terrified to step outside the house. They sleep on our bedroom floor most nights because they're too scared to be in their own rooms. That's not the childhood we wanted to give them. I never believed in this stuff before. If someone had told me this story 2 years ago, I would have laughed them out of the room. I would have thought they were crazy or making it up for attention. But I'm not laughing anymore. I can't laugh when I'm lying awake at 3 in the morning listening to something walking around outside my house. I can't laugh when I see the fear in my children's eyes. Our farm is in rural Oregon, tucked into a valley about 40 miles from the nearest town of any size. It's 200 acres of mostly pasture and crop fields with dense forests surrounding us on 3 sides. The trees come right up to our property line, thick stands of Douglas fir and western hemlock that stretch for miles in every direction. State forest land, wilderness. Beautiful, we always thought. A blessing. We took over the property from my parents 5 years ago. They'd gotten too old to manage it, and my wife and I had always dreamed of farm life, raising our kids in the country, away from the noise and stress of the city. Teaching them about animals and nature and hard work. For the first 3 years, it was everything we'd hoped for. Paradise. The kids thrived. We thrived. The farm was profitable enough. Life was good. Looking back now, I can pinpoint when things started to change. It was late summer, about 2 years ago. The signs were subtle at first, so subtle we didn't even register them as signs. Our chickens started disappearing. We kept about 30 laying hens in a coop near the barn, and over the course of a few weeks, we lost maybe 5 or 6 of them. No feathers, no blood, no signs of a struggle. They just vanished. We blamed coyotes. Coyotes were common in the area, and they were smart enough to snatch a chicken without leaving much evidence. We reinforced the coop, added better latches, checked for holes in the wire, but the disappearances didn't stop. If anything, they got more frequent. Then our other animals started acting strange. The horses would get spooked at night, pacing their stalls, whinnying and kicking at the walls. Our goats, normally calm and curious, would huddle together in the corner of their pen, all of them facing the same direction, staring toward the tree line like they could see something we couldn't. The dogs would bark at nothing, hackles raised, teeth bared, refusing to go near certain parts of the property. And then there was the smell. Some mornings we'd walk outside and this odor would hit us. It wasn't like anything we'd encountered on the farm before. Not like manure or a dead animal or even a skunk. This was different. Musky, almost rotten, but with a sharp quality to it that made your nose wrinkle and your eyes water. The smell would be strongest near the edge of the property where the woods started, and it would hang in the air for hours before slowly fading away. My wife would complain about it when she was hanging laundry or working in the garden. I'd notice it when I was checking fences or moving irrigation equipment. We'd mentioned it to each other in passing, but never really discussed what it might mean. We told ourselves it was a bear passing through, or maybe a family of raccoons had died somewhere in the underbrush. We made excuses because the alternative seemed impossible. The truth is, we didn't want to think too hard about it. We were happy, life was good, and strange smells and skittish animals weren't enough to make us question our reality. We rationalized everything, explained it away, told ourselves there had to be a normal explanation. That's what people do when faced with something that doesn't fit their worldview. They ignore it until they can't anymore. Everything changed on a cold morning in early October. I was up early, around 6 o'clock, checking the fence line near the North Woods. We'd had some elk come through a few days earlier, and I wanted to make sure they hadn't damaged anything. The sun was just starting to come up, that gray pre-dawn light where everything looks washed out and colorless. I was walking along the fence, head down, focused on looking for broken posts or sagging wire. The property was quiet except for the sound of my boots in the wet grass. No birds singing yet, no wind in the trees, just silence. That should have been my first clue that something was wrong. The forest is never completely silent unless there's a reason. I got this feeling. You know that feeling when you suddenly know someone's watching you? That prickle on the back of your neck? That instinctive awareness that you're not alone? I'd felt it a few times before on the property, usually before spotting a deer or elk in the distance. But this felt different, more intense, more focused. I looked up, and there it was. Standing between two large trees, maybe 50 yards away, just watching me. My brain tried to process what I was seeing, tried to make it make sense. At first, I thought it was a person, someone trespassing on our property. But as my eyes adjusted and the details came into focus, I realized it couldn't be a person. It was too tall, way too tall, had to be at least 8 feet, maybe taller. It was hard to judge distance and size in that light, but it towered over everything around it. And it was broad, shoulders like you'd see on a professional football player, but scaled up to match that impossible height. The proportions were all wrong for a human being. The thing was covered in dark brown hair, not fur like a bear has, but hair. Long, shaggy hair that hung off its arms and body in matted clumps. The hair was darker in some places, lighter in others, like it had been bleached by the sun in spots. It hung down past where its knees would be, moving slightly in a breeze I couldn't feel. But it was the way it stood that really got to me. It wasn't hunched over like a bear. It was standing upright, perfectly balanced on 2 legs, with a posture that was almost human. Its arms hung at its sides, long and thick with muscle. Its head was large and conical, set on a thick neck, and even from that distance, I could see it was looking directly at me. We stared at each other for what felt like an eternity, but was probably only 10 seconds. I couldn't move. My whole body had locked up with some primal fear I'd never experienced before. It wasn't the fear of seeing a predator like a bear or a mountain lion. This was deeper, more fundamental. Like some ancient part of my brain was screaming at me that I was in the presence of something I shouldn't be seeing, something that challenged everything I thought I knew about the world. Its eyes caught the early morning light. They reflected back at me with an amber glow, and there was intelligence in that gaze. Not animal intelligence. Something more. It was watching me with the same curiosity and assessment that I was watching it, sizing me up, deciding something. Then I blinked and it was gone. Didn't run, didn't make a sound, didn't crash through the underbrush like a startled animal would. It just vanished into the forest like it had never been there at all. 1 second it was there, solid and real and impossible to ignore. The next second, the space between those trees was empty. I stood there for another few minutes, heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears, trying to convince myself I'd imagined it. Maybe it was a shadow. Maybe the light was playing tricks on me. Maybe I was more tired than I thought, and my brain had conjured something that wasn't there. But even as I tried to rationalize it, I knew what I'd seen. I knew it was real. I didn't tell my wife right away. I was afraid of how crazy it would sound, afraid she'd think I was losing my mind, afraid that saying it out loud would make it too real. So I kept it to myself for a few days, trying to process it, trying to figure out what to do with this information that didn't fit anywhere in my understanding of reality. Over the next few weeks, I started finding more evidence that what I'd seen wasn't an isolated incident. I'd be out working on the property and I'd notice things. Footprints near the creek that runs through the back 40 acres. These weren't bear prints. I've seen plenty of bear prints in my life. These were different. They looked almost human, with 5 distinct toes and an arch that suggested a heel-to-toe gait, but they were massive, 18 inches long, easy, maybe more. The depth of the impressions in the mud suggested something incredibly heavy. The stride length between prints was huge, way longer than any human could manage. I measured one set, and it was over 6 feet between steps. I'd find these prints in different locations around the property, always near the woods, never in the open fields, near the chicken coop, by the barn, along the tree line behind our house. It was like something was making regular patrols around the edge of our land, checking on us, making sure we knew it was there. Then one morning I found one of our goats dead in the pasture. We had a small herd of about 10 dairy goats, and this one was lying on its side in the grass, perfectly still. When I got close enough to examine it, I saw its neck was broken, cleanly broken, like someone had grabbed its head and twisted. No blood, no bite marks, no claw marks, no signs of a struggle at all. I've seen what predators do to livestock. Bears maul. They tear and rip and leave a bloody mess. Mountain lions leave puncture wounds from their teeth and claw marks from their paws. Coyotes work in packs and leave multiple wounds. This was none of that. This was surgical, precise, like something had killed it with its bare hands and then just left it there. My wife started hearing things at night. She'd wake me up at 2 or 3 in the morning, shaking my shoulder, whispering that she heard something outside. I'd lie there in the darkness, listening. At first I couldn't hear anything unusual, just the normal sounds of the farm at night. Wind in the trees, the occasional call of an owl, the house settling. But then I'd hear it too, a deep grunt coming from somewhere in the distance, low and resonant, like nothing I'd ever heard before. Not a bear, not an elk, something else. And then there was the knocking. That's the only word I have for it. Knocking, like someone was hitting 2 pieces of wood together out in the forest. Slow, methodical knocks that would echo across the property. 3 knocks, pause, 3 more knocks. Over and over. We'd lie in bed listening to these sounds, and I could feel my wife shaking next to me. She'd grip my hand so tight it hurt, and I'd try to comfort her, try to tell her it was probably just trees rubbing together in the wind. But I didn't believe it any more than she did. We both knew what we were hearing wasn't natural. Neither of us was sleeping well anymore. Every sound outside made us jump. Every shadow looked like something it wasn't. The peace and quiet we'd loved about the property now felt oppressive. The silence was threatening. The darkness was full of things we couldn't see. The farm that had been our dream was starting to feel like a trap. About a month after my first sighting, my wife had her own encounter. It was a bright, sunny afternoon in late October. Nothing creepy or ominous about the day. The kids were at school. I was in town picking up some supplies we needed for winter repairs. My wife was home alone doing laundry. We had a clothesline set up between the house and the barn, and she was hanging wet sheets out to dry. She told me later that the day was so beautiful, so normal, that she'd actually been feeling good for the first time in weeks. The sun was warm on her face. There was a nice breeze. She was thinking about making a special dinner for the family that night. Everything felt okay. Then she heard branches breaking in the woods, loud cracks, like something big was pushing through the undergrowth without any attempt at stealth. She looked toward the tree line, and there it was, standing just inside the shadows where the sunlight didn't quite reach. The same massive creature I'd seen, or one just like it. This time it was closer than when I'd seen it, only about 40 yards away, close enough for her to see details I hadn't been able to make out. The hair on its body was matted and dirty, she said. Its face was dark, almost black, with a flat nose and a heavy brow. Its arms hung down past its knees, thick with muscle, ending in massive hands. But what struck her most were its eyes. She described them as watching her with intelligent curiosity. Not aggressive, she said, not threatening, just watching, studying her, like it was trying to figure out what she was doing, why she was there. She said there was something almost human in its gaze, something that made her realize this wasn't just an animal acting on instinct. This was something that was thinking, analyzing, making decisions about her. They stared at each other for maybe 15 seconds. My wife was frozen, unable to move, unable to process what she was seeing. The creature stood perfectly still, not even seeming to breathe, just watching her with those intelligent eyes. Then it shifted its weight slightly, and the spell broke. My wife screamed, not a little shriek, but a full-throated scream of pure terror. She dropped the basket of laundry she was holding and ran for the house. She told me later she'd never run so fast in her life, convinced with every step that the thing was right behind her, about to grab her. She made it to the house, slammed the door, locked it, and then collapsed on the kitchen floor, sobbing. She called me immediately, but she was crying so hard I could barely understand her. All I could make out was something about a monster in the woods and please come home. I left the truck sitting in the parking lot of the feed store with the door open and the keys in the ignition. I drove home doing 80 the whole way, taking corners too fast, running stop signs, my heart in my throat. When I got there, I grabbed my rifle from the rack by the door and went outside. My wife was still on the kitchen floor, shaking. I told her to lock the door behind me and not open it for anyone but me. Then I walked toward the tree line where she'd seen it, rifle raised, finger on the trigger, my whole body pumped full of adrenaline. It was gone, of course. No sign it had ever been there. But the laundry basket was still on the ground where she'd dropped it, sheets scattered across the grass. And there, in the soft dirt near the tree line, was a single massive footprint. Fresh, deep, unmistakable. I stood there staring at that print, and I knew our lives had just changed forever. That night, we sat at the kitchen table after the kids had gone to bed, and we finally admitted to each other what we were dealing with. We talked about everything we'd seen, everything we'd heard, all the signs we'd been ignoring, the missing chickens, the dead goat, the footprints, the smells, the sounds at night. We laid it all out, and we both came to the same impossible conclusion. There was something living in the woods around our property. Something that shouldn't exist, something that every part of our rational, modern minds told us couldn't be real. But it was real. We'd both seen it. And now that we'd acknowledged it, now that we'd said it out loud, there was no going back to pretending everything was normal. After that day, everything changed. It was like once we both acknowledged what was out there, it felt free to show itself more often. Or maybe we were just paying attention now, seeing things we'd been unconsciously ignoring before. Either way, the sightings became more frequent. We'd see it at dusk, that gray time between day and night when the light plays tricks, but you can still make out shapes. A massive shadow moving past the barn, a dark figure standing at the edge of the woods, there one moment and gone the next. Sometimes it was just a glimpse, a split-second sighting that left us wondering if we'd really seen anything at all. Other times it was more prolonged, a clear view of this impossible creature watching us from the forest. The footprints were everywhere now. We'd find fresh ones every morning, sometimes multiple sets from different sized creatures. around the barn, near the chicken coop, which we'd long since given up trying to protect, by the garden, where several times we found vegetables had been stolen right off the vine, along the fence line, and most disturbing of all, under the kids' bedroom windows. Both windows on different sides of the house, perfect prints in the soft dirt of the flower beds where something had stood looking in while our children slept. The prints were deep, showing that whatever made them had stood there for a while, not just passing by, standing, watching. The thought of these creatures staring at our sleeping kids through the glass made my blood run cold. That's when the kids started talking about hearing tapping on their windows at night. They'd mentioned it before, but we dismissed it as imagination or tree branches. Now we listened. They described a rhythmic pattern. 3 taps, pause, 3 more taps. Always the same, always at night, always on the windows that faced the woods. We checked for branches that might be hitting the glass in the wind. There weren't any. The nearest trees were 50 feet away. There was nothing that could naturally be making that sound. My wife wanted to move the kids' beds to rooms on the other side of the house, rooms that faced the driveway and the open fields. But I was worried about scaring them even more than they already were. I was worried about what it would mean to admit that we couldn't keep them safe in their own bedrooms. We installed motion lights all around the house, bright LED floods that would light up the whole yard if anything moved. We got a dog, a big German Shepherd that was supposed to be a good guard animal. We started locking every door and window at night, something we'd never done in all our years on the farm. We'd moved to the country specifically to get away from that kind of constant vigilance. None of it helped. The motion lights went off constantly, triggered by shadows or wind or who knows what. Sometimes we'd look out and see nothing. Other times we'd catch glimpses of something large and dark just at the edge of the light's reach, moving away. The dog barked itself hoarse every night and refused to go near certain parts of the property. During the day, it would stay close to the house, tail between its legs, whimpering at sounds we couldn't hear. The feeling of being watched never went away. We'd be outside working and the hair on the back of our necks would stand up. We'd look toward the woods and see nothing, but we knew something was there, knew it was watching, studying us, learning our patterns. We felt like animals in a zoo, observed and analyzed by something we couldn't see or understand. We finally broke down and called the county rangers. We didn't mention Bigfoot. We knew how that would sound, how we'd be dismissed as crazy people who'd watched too many paranormal shows. Instead, we reported a large animal on our property that was harassing our livestock and getting too close to the house. We said we were worried about our kids' safety. 2 rangers came out a few days later. They walked around the property with us, took pictures of the footprints, examined the hole in the barn wall where the creature had crashed through. I could tell they were confused. The footprints didn't match any known animal. The hole in the wall showed incredible force. The scratches on the horse's flank didn't look like bear claws or mountain lion claws. One of them suggested it might be a bear, but he didn't sound convinced even as he said it. The other ranger didn't say much at all, just kept taking pictures and writing things down in a notebook. They asked us questions about when the activity started, how frequent it was, whether we'd actually seen the animal. We told them yes, we'd seen it. We described its size and appearance as best we could without using the word Bigfoot. They gave us a phone number to call if we saw it again or if the situation escalated. They told us to be careful and to keep our distance from whatever it was. They recommended we bring our livestock closer to the house and maybe install some more lights. Then they left. That was it. No promises to send someone to patrol the area. No mention of setting traps or trying to identify what we were dealing with. Just a phone number and some general advice. We never heard from them again. Not a follow-up call, not a written report, nothing. It was like they'd filed our complaint in some drawer marked probably crazy and moved on to other things. We felt completely alone with this problem. The authorities couldn't help us, or wouldn't. We were on our own. I decided I needed to know more about what we were dealing with. Where were these things coming from? Where were they going during the day? Was there a den or a nest or some kind of home base? If I could find where they were living, maybe I could figure out how to make them leave. Maybe I could understand what they wanted. So one morning, after my wife and kids left for town, I grabbed my rifle, filled a canteen with water, and headed into the woods. I told myself I'd be back in an hour, that I'd just do a quick scout around the immediate area and then come home. But once I started, I kept going deeper, following signs and tracks, driven by a need to understand what was terrorizing my family. I followed the creek that runs through the back of our property, using it as a landmark so I wouldn't get lost. The deeper I went into the forest, the quieter it became. No birds singing, no squirrels chattering, nothing. Just the sound of the water over rocks and my own breathing. The hair on my arms was standing up. Every instinct I had was screaming at me to turn around and go back. But I kept going. About a quarter mile in, I started finding signs. Trees with long strips of bark torn off, like something had been scraping its claws or nails down the trunk. The gouges went from ground level to 8 or 9 feet up, higher than any bear could reach standing on its hind legs. Some of the trees had been hit so many times the bare wood underneath was smooth and polished. Then I started seeing broken branches, not snapped by wind or fallen naturally, but twisted and broken at deliberate angles. Some of them were as thick as my arm, just snapped like twigs and left hanging. They were broken at heights that would require a ladder for a human to reach, or something much taller than a human. That's when I found the markers. That's the only word I have for them. The first one was a stack of rocks balanced in a way that looked impossible. 5 or 6 rocks of different sizes, stacked on top of each other with the largest on top, defying gravity and physics. There was no way they'd stack themselves naturally. This was deliberate, purposeful. I found more as I walked, small bones arranged in perfect circles on the ground, like someone had carefully placed each one. Twisted bundles of grass and twigs hung from low branches, swaying in the breeze. Large logs moved from where they'd fallen and propped against trees at angles. Every one of these things looked intentional. They were markers, signs, warnings maybe, or territorial boundaries. The worst thing I found was a deer skull. It was mounted on a broken branch that had been jammed into the ground like a fence post. The skull was positioned so it was facing directly toward our property, toward our house. The antlers were intact, the eye sockets empty and black, the jaw hanging open. The skull was fresh, probably only a few days old. It still had bits of dried tissue clinging to it. I stood there looking at that skull, and the realization hit me like a punch to the gut. This wasn't random. This was a message, a warning. Something was claiming this area as its own and letting us know, in terms it thought we'd understand, that we were in its space, that we were the intruders, that we weren't welcome. While I was standing there trying to process what I was seeing, I heard that wood-knocking sound again. Close this time, maybe 100 yards away, maybe less. 3 loud knocks that echoed through the trees. Pause. 3 more knocks. The sound was coming from deeper in the forest, from the direction I'd been heading. I didn't wait to see what made the sound. I didn't investigate further. I turned around and got out of those woods as fast as I could without running. Running would have made me prey. Some part of my brain understood that. So I walked quickly, keeping my rifle up, glancing over my shoulder every few steps, expecting at any moment to see something following me. I made it back to the house in what felt like half the time it had taken me to walk in. My shirt was soaked with sweat even though the day was cool. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely unlock the door. I stood in the kitchen for a long time, just trying to calm down, trying to convince myself I'd done the right thing by leaving instead of pressing forward. But I knew what I'd seen. Those markers weren't natural. They were deliberate, intelligent. These creatures weren't just animals wandering through. They lived here. This was their territory. And they were marking it, claiming it, defending it. We were the ones who didn't belong. About a week after my walk in the woods, we had what I think of as the barn incident. It was the night that made everything real in a way it hadn't been before. The night we realized we weren't safe, even inside our own buildings. It was around midnight. We'd been asleep for maybe an hour when our dogs started barking, not their normal bark when a car drives by or a deer wanders into the yard. This was frantic, panicked barking, the kind of sound that jerks you out of sleep and gets your heart racing before your brain is fully awake. The dogs were throwing themselves against the back door, desperate to get inside the house. I grabbed my rifle and a heavy flashlight and went to the back door. My wife begged me not to go outside, to just call 911 and wait for help. But I couldn't just lie there while something was on our property, while our animals were in danger. And in rural Oregon, the sheriff might take 45 minutes to arrive. By then, whatever was out there would be long gone. I opened the door and the dogs practically knocked me over, rushing inside. They ran straight to our bedroom and dove under the bed, tails between their legs, shaking. These were supposed to be guard dogs. They wouldn't come back out, no matter how much I called them. I stepped outside and immediately heard what had spooked them. Something was in the barn. I could hear our horses going crazy, kicking at their stalls, making sounds I'd never heard from them before. Horses don't scream often, but when they do, it's a sound that goes right through you. High-pitched and terrified, the sound of an animal that thinks it's about to die. I approached the barn slowly, rifle raised, finger on the trigger. My hands were shaking. The motion light had come on, flooding the area with harsh white light, but it just made the shadows deeper and more threatening. The barn door was slightly open, which was wrong. I always latched it at night, always. But it was hanging open about a foot, swaying slightly. When I got close enough to look inside, the smell hit me first. That same musky, rotten smell we'd noticed before, but concentrated, overwhelming. So strong it made my eyes water and my stomach turn. I shined my flashlight inside and saw a massive shadow at the far end of the barn, near the last stall where we kept our oldest mare. The creature was crouched, hunched over near the stall door. Even crouching, it was enormous, taking up space that should have required 2 or 3 people. I caught glimpses of dark fur or hair, a massive broad back, arms as thick as my thighs. It was doing something, making some kind of noise that was almost like words, but not quite. A low, rhythmic sound that might have been communication or might have been something else entirely. I yelled at it to get out. My voice came out higher and shakier than I wanted, barely more than a shout. The creature's head whipped around, and for just a second my flashlight caught its face, flat, dark, with eyes that reflected the light. Then it moved, faster than anything that size should be able to move, and ducked behind some hay bales stacked along the wall. I heard it moving, heard the hay bales shifting, heard something heavy and fast crossing the barn floor. Then there was this tremendous crash that made me jump so hard I almost dropped my rifle. The creature had gone straight through the back barn wall, not through the door, which was right there, through the wall, splintered the old wooden planks like they were cardboard and just crashed through into the darkness beyond. I stood there in the doorway for what felt like forever, but was probably only a minute or two, too scared to go further inside, too scared to turn my back and leave. My whole body was shaking. The rifle felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. I kept the flashlight trained on that ragged hole in the back wall, expecting at any moment to see the creature come back through. Eventually, I worked up the courage to check on the horses. They were wild-eyed and covered in sweat, but they were alive. The oldest mare was pressed into the corner of her stall, shaking so badly I could hear her hooves rattling on the floor. Her breath was coming in huge gasps. I checked her over and found scratches on her flank. 4 parallel lines, deep but not bleeding much. Like something with very large fingers had tried to grab her and she jerked away at the last second. I didn't sleep the rest of that night. I sat in a chair by the bedroom window with my rifle across my lap, watching the barn, watching the woods, watching for any sign of movement. My wife stayed awake with me, neither of us speaking, both of us jumping at every sound. When the sun finally came up, I went back out to the barn to assess the damage in daylight. The hole in the back wall was bigger than I'd thought. The creature had broken through 4 boards, each one 6 inches wide and an inch thick. Just snapped them like they were nothing. Around the jagged edges, I found hair caught on the splinters, coarse, dark brown hair about 6 inches long. I pulled some of it free and brought it inside, though I had no idea what to do with it. There were footprints inside the barn, multiple prints showing that the creature had walked around checking things out before I'd arrived. The prints were deep in the dirt floor, showing its massive weight. And there were handprints too on one of the support posts. 5 fingered prints, almost human-looking except for the size and the spacing. Each finger impression was thicker than my thumb. Over the following weeks, we realized something that made our situation even worse. We weren't dealing with just one Bigfoot. There were multiple creatures, a group, maybe a family. We'd been seeing the large, dark brown one regularly. That seemed to be the most aggressive, the most territorial, the one that had broken through the barn wall, the one that left the deer skull on the property line. But we started spotting others. A smaller one, maybe 7 feet tall instead of 8 or 9, with reddish-brown hair that caught the light differently. And sometimes we'd see what looked like a juvenile, smaller still, that would dart between trees too fast for us to get a good look. The behavior was different depending on which one we were seeing. The large one seemed focused on intimidation, on making sure we knew this was its territory. The reddish one seemed more curious, more willing to show itself, more interested in watching what we were doing. The small one, the possible juvenile, seemed skittish and would only appear briefly before vanishing again. At night, we'd hear them calling to each other, long, low whoops that would carry across the property and echo off the hills. One would call from the north woods and another would answer from the south. Sometimes a third voice would join in from the east. It was like they were coordinating, communicating, keeping track of each other's positions. And we were in the middle of their territory, surrounded. The realization that there were multiple creatures made everything exponentially worse. One Bigfoot was terrifying enough, but a group, a family unit, that suggested permanence. It suggested they weren't just passing through. They lived here. This was their home. And we were the intruders, the interlopers, the invaders who needed to be driven out. The incident with our kids was the absolute breaking point, the moment when we went from trying to tough it out to seriously planning our escape. It happened on a late afternoon in early fall, one of those beautiful days that makes you forget all your troubles for a moment. The sun was still up, but getting low in the sky, that golden hour photographers love. The air was crisp and cool, perfect weather. My wife was inside making dinner, something with roast chicken and vegetables. I was down by the road working on the tractor, which had been acting up. The kids were playing in the yard like they'd done 1,000 times before, running around, laughing, being kids. I heard my daughter scream. Not a playful scream like when her brother chases her or she finds a bug. A real scream. The kind of sound that makes your blood run cold and your whole body react before your brain even processes what's happening. The kind of scream that every parent dreads hearing from their child. I dropped the wrench I was holding and ran toward the house. My heart was already racing, already preparing for the worst. Behind me, I could hear the tractor still running, but I didn't care. I just ran. When I got to the yard, both kids were already inside. I could see them through the kitchen window, pressed against the glass, crying, pointing toward the yard. My wife had her arms around them, and she was crying too. I burst through the door and grabbed my rifle from the rack, the one I'd started keeping loaded all the time. My wife was trying to tell me something, but her voice was shaking too hard for me to understand. I told her to lock the door behind me and not open it for anyone but me. Then I went back outside. The yard was empty, no sign of anything wrong, but their toys were scattered everywhere, dropped mid-play. Our son's toy truck was tipped over in the grass, wheels still spinning. Our daughter's doll was lying face down near the sandbox. A ball had rolled all the way to the fence line. They'd dropped everything and run. I checked the tree line with my rifle raised, scanning for any movement, any sign of what had scared them. The forest was still and silent. Too still, too silent. I walked the perimeter of the yard, looking for tracks, looking for anything. Near where the toys were scattered, I found them. Fresh footprints in the grass, so fresh the bent blades hadn't sprung back up yet. Massive prints heading from the woods to the middle of the yard, then back to the woods. When I came back inside, my wife had gotten the kids calmed down enough to tell us what happened. They said a big, hairy man came out of the woods. Our daughter said he was huge, way bigger than Daddy, and covered in brown fur like a bear, but standing up straight like a person. Our son said it came out from between the trees and just stood there at the edge of the yard watching them. They both said they froze at first, not sure what they were seeing. Then it took a step toward them, just one step, but that was enough. They dropped their toys and ran for the house, ran as fast as their little legs would carry them, our daughter screaming the whole way. They said they could hear it behind them, could hear its heavy footsteps, but they didn't look back. They just ran. That night, after the kids finally fell asleep in our bed between us, my wife and I stayed up late talking. Whispering so we wouldn't wake them, but talking seriously about what we were going to do. We'd been trying to tough it out, trying not to let this thing drive us from our home. We'd been telling ourselves we could handle it, that we could coexist somehow, that it would eventually move on or get bored and leave us alone. But our kids, our babies, they weren't safe here. That realization hit us both like a physical blow. This wasn't about being brave anymore. This wasn't about protecting our heritage or refusing to give up on our dream. This was about keeping our children alive and unharmed, and we couldn't do that here. Not anymore. We thought if we could get clear evidence, maybe someone would help us. Maybe if we could show the authorities exactly what we were dealing with, they'd take the situation seriously. Maybe they'd send someone to patrol the area or set up cameras or do something, anything, to help us. So we bought trail cameras, the good ones that hunters use with night vision and motion sensors. We set them up around the property, mounted on trees facing the areas where we'd seen the most activity. The barn, the tree line behind the house, the creek, the north pasture. We positioned them carefully, making sure they had clear views, fresh batteries, empty memory cards, ready to capture whatever showed up. Within a week, 3 of the cameras were gone, just vanished. We searched the areas where we'd mounted them, thinking maybe they'd been knocked down by wind or a falling branch. We found nothing. No cameras, no pieces, no evidence they'd ever been there. Just empty trees and disturbed ground where something had clearly been digging or pulling. We found one of the missing cameras about 50 yards into the woods. It had been smashed to pieces. The casing was cracked open, the lens shattered, the memory card ripped out and crushed. Whatever had done it had been thorough and deliberate. This wasn't accidental damage. This was destruction. This was anger. Another camera we found hanging upside down from a branch 20 feet off the ground. It was still working, still recording, but all it showed was sky and leaves. Something had climbed up there and moved it, repositioned it so it couldn't capture anything useful. The intelligence that requires the understanding of what a camera does and how to neutralize it was almost more frightening than the creatures themselves. The last camera that survived showed almost nothing useful. Days of empty forest. Then, in one clip, you could see movement, something large and dark moving fast past the camera's field of view. Then the camera spins, jerked by something hitting it hard, and you get a dizzying blur of forest floor before it goes black. Whatever hit it had knocked it loose from the tree, and the memory card corrupted when it landed. It was like they knew, like they understood what the cameras were for and deliberately avoided them or destroyed them. These weren't just animals acting on instinct. These were beings that understood technology, understood human intentions, understood they were being watched, and didn't want evidence of their existence. That level of intelligence is almost scarier than anything else. We weren't just dealing with cryptids. We were dealing with something that could think, plan, and actively work against us. Despite our fear, despite wanting nothing more than to ignore them and hope they'd go away, we couldn't help but notice patterns in their behavior. When you're living with constant vigilance, when every sound makes you jump and every shadow could be them, you start to see things, understand things. They were most active during dawn and dusk, those gray times when the light plays tricks and shadows are deepest and longest. During the middle of the day, especially on bright sunny days, we rarely saw signs of them. The footprints we'd find would be from the night before. The evidence of their presence would be old. But we always felt watched, even in broad daylight, like they were there, somewhere in the forest, waiting for the right time to show themselves. At night, we'd hear them moving around, footsteps heavy enough to feel through the ground if you were sitting still. Their calls echoing through the darkness, sounds that might have been communication, or might have been warnings, or might have been something else entirely. We'd lie in bed listening to them, trying to count how many there were, trying to figure out what they were doing, knowing we'd never really understand. They seemed to watch us from the forest edge during the day when we had to be outside for farm work. We'd catch glimpses of them between trees, always at a distance, always positioned so they could see us, but we could only barely see them. Sometimes they'd venture closer when it was dark. We'd see shadows moving past windows, darker than the night around them. We'd hear footsteps on the porch, slow and deliberate. We'd find handprints on the glass in the morning, massive prints with fingers as long as my forearm. Our dogs refused to go near certain areas of the property. The whole north pasture was off limits as far as they were concerned. They'd stop at an invisible line and refuse to cross it, no matter how much we coaxed or commanded. Their hackles would rise, their ears would flatten, they'd whimper and back away. They knew something we could only sense. The livestock were constantly stressed. Our goats, which had been producing a gallon of milk a day each, dropped to half that. The chickens that survived stopped laying almost entirely. The horses were skittish and jumpy all the time, starting at sounds we couldn't hear, refusing to go into certain parts of their pasture. The farm animals knew. They could sense the predators that surrounded us, even when we couldn't see them. The farm was falling apart around us, and it wasn't from neglect or lack of effort. It was from constant fear, from the fact that we couldn't focus on normal farm work when we were always watching the tree line, always listening for sounds that didn't belong, always wondering if today would be the day these creatures stopped just watching and decided to do something worse. The physical damage to our property started small but escalated over time. At first, it was minor things we could explain away or fix easily, but it got worse. more frequent, more destructive, more expensive. One morning we found the wiring torn out of our tractor, not chewed by rodents or damaged by weather, torn out, ripped from the engine compartment and scattered across the ground like someone had grabbed fistfuls of wire and just yanked. The damage was so extensive we had to have the whole thing rewired, which cost us $1,500 we didn't have. Our small storage shed where we kept tools and equipment was knocked completely over one night. We heard the crash from inside the house, loud enough to wake us up. When we looked out the window, we couldn't see anything in the darkness. In the morning, we found the shed flattened, the metal roof bent and twisted, the walls collapsed. It looked like something had just pushed it over, like a child knocking down a tower of blocks. The tools inside were scattered and damaged. Our garden fence was ripped apart in sections. Not broken by animals trying to get to the vegetables, but deliberately destroyed. The posts were yanked straight out of the ground, concrete footings and all. Some of them were thrown 20 feet away. The wire mesh was shredded and trampled. The vegetables we'd spent months nurturing were crushed into the dirt. Every plant destroyed in what looked like a deliberate act of vandalism. We kept losing livestock. Another goat with a broken neck found in the same condition as the first. A calf that disappeared entirely one night, leaving only a trail of blood that led into the woods, and then vanished. Each loss represented hundreds of dollars gone. Each repair took time we didn't have, and money we couldn't spare. The financial strain was adding up, piling on top of the emotional trauma. It felt like harassment, like we were being deliberately driven away. Every morning we'd wake up wondering what would be damaged or destroyed. Every evening we'd do a check of the property, cataloging new problems, new costs, new reasons we couldn't keep doing this. These creatures wanted us gone. They wanted their territory back. And they were willing to destroy everything we'd built to make it happen. After the incident with our kids, after the escalating property damage, we called the rangers again. We were more desperate this time, less worried about sounding crazy. We laid it all out, the sightings, the footprints, the property damage, the fact that something had approached our children. We begged them to do something, anything to help us. A different ranger came out this time, a younger guy who seemed more open-minded than the first two. He walked the property with us, saw the damage, examined the footprints that were everywhere now, looked at the broken fence posts and the flattened shed. He took pictures of everything. He measured the footprints. He asked detailed questions about when things happened and what exactly we'd seen. I could tell he was unsettled by what he was seeing. The evidence didn't match any known animal. The pattern of damage suggested intelligence and purpose. The size of the footprints was beyond anything that should exist. He stood there looking at one particularly clear print, and I saw him shake his head like he couldn't quite believe what he was seeing. He admitted very quietly that he'd heard other reports from the area, other farmers and homesteaders seeing things in the woods, strange sounds at night, missing livestock, property damage that didn't make sense. He said the official position was that it was probably bears or mountain lions, maybe a particularly bold pack of wolves. But off the record, speaking just to us, he said he wasn't sure. He said there were things in these woods that couldn't be explained by normal wildlife. Then he said something that made my stomach drop. He said unless someone was physically attacked, unless there was a clear and immediate threat to human life that could be documented, there wasn't much they could do. They couldn't post guards on private property indefinitely. They couldn't hunt something they didn't officially acknowledge existed. They couldn't even put out warnings because it would cause panic. He suggested very carefully, choosing his words with obvious reluctance, that if the situation continued or escalated, we might need to consider relocating, for our safety and especially for our kids' safety. He saw the look on our faces and apologized, said he wished there was more he could do. said he'd file a detailed report and flag our property for extra patrol attention. But we both knew that meant nothing. Then he left and we were alone with it again. The constant fear is exhausting in a way I can't fully explain. It's not like being afraid of a storm or a dangerous situation that passes. This fear never ends. It's there when you wake up and when you go to sleep. It's there when you're making breakfast and when you're trying to work. It colors everything. It takes over your life. We're not sleeping. My wife has nightmares every single night now. She wakes up screaming, convinced something is in the house, convinced she can hear breathing outside our bedroom door. Sometimes she's so disoriented when she wakes up that it takes several minutes to calm her down, to convince her we're safe, to get her breathing normally again. She's losing weight. She has dark circles under her eyes that won't go away. The kids are terrified to play outside. They used to beg to go out, used to spend hours running around the property. Now they have to be forced to even step onto the porch. They're afraid to go to bed at night. They sleep in our room most nights, all four of us crammed into one bedroom because they won't sleep alone. They have nightmares too. Our daughter still talks about the big, hairy man who chased them. Our son refuses to look out any window that faces the woods. We take turns staying awake at night, keeping watch. One of us sits by the bedroom window with the rifle across our lap while the other tries to sleep. But neither of us really sleeps anymore. We just lie there in the dark, listening to every sound, jumping at every creak of the house settling, every branch that scrapes against the roof, every animal that moves in the night. Every sound could be them. Our friends and extended family think we're exaggerating. They think the isolation has made us paranoid, that we're letting our imaginations run wild. When we try to explain, when we try to describe what we've seen and experienced, we can see it in their eyes. They think we're crazy. They think we're making it up for attention or sympathy. No one believes us except the few locals who've had their own encounters, and they won't talk about it openly because they know how people react. The isolation is crushing. We can't talk to anyone about this. We can't get help. We can't even get people to believe us. We're dealing with something that shouldn't exist, and society has no framework for helping us. There's no government agency for Bigfoot problems, no hotline to call, no experts to consult. We're completely on our own. The strain is affecting our marriage. My wife and I argue constantly about what to do. She wants to leave immediately, to put the house up for sale and move to town where there are neighbors and streetlights and police who can respond in minutes instead of hours. I keep thinking we can hold on, that maybe the creatures will move on eventually, that we can outlast them. But deep down, I know she's right. This situation isn't sustainable. Something has to give, and if we don't make a decision soon, it'll be made for us. The past few months have been the absolute worst. The activity has increased to the point where we're seeing these things almost daily, not just glimpses or shadows anymore. Full, clear sightings in good light. They don't seem afraid of us at all anymore. They don't hide or run away. They just watch us, bold as anything, like they own the place. We've found more territorial markers everywhere. The stacked rocks are closer to the house now, some of them right at the edge of our yard. The twisted branches are hanging from trees we planted ourselves, trees that are well within our property boundaries. The bone circles have appeared in our garden, in our pastures, even on our porch once. It's like they're pushing the boundary, claiming more and more of our land as theirs, slowly encroaching until there's nowhere left that feels safe. One morning, we found a dead coyote on our front porch, right on the welcome mat, like some kind of grotesque gift. Its neck was broken in that same clean way, same as the goat's. But this felt different. This felt like a message. The coyote was arranged deliberately, positioned so we'd see it the moment we opened the door. My wife refuses to use the front door now, won't even go near it. The kids won't go outside at all anymore, not to help with chores, not to play, not for anything. They've become prisoners in their own home. They're developing anxiety, becoming withdrawn. Our daughter has started wetting the bed again, something she hasn't done since she was 3. Our son has stopped talking much. The light has gone out of their eyes. We're watching our children's childhoods being stolen by fear, and there's nothing we can do about it. We're now seriously planning to leave the farm, not just talking about it abstractly, but actually making concrete plans. We've contacted a realtor. We've started looking at houses in town. We're going through our belongings and deciding what we can take and what we'll have to leave behind. The conversation has shifted from if we'll leave to when and how. This place is my heritage. My grandfather cleared this land with his own hands. My father built most of the structures on it. I grew up here, learned to work here, dreamed of raising my own family here. I've put years of my own blood, sweat, and tears into every acre. Walking away feels like betraying everything my family built, like admitting defeat, like letting these creatures win. But it's not just about me anymore. My wife is at her breaking point. She cries every day now. She's talking about taking the kids and leaving even if I want to stay, and I know she means it. And the kids, God, the kids, they're traumatized. They need to feel safe, and they don't feel safe here. They need to be able to play outside and sleep in their own beds and not live in constant fear. What kind of father would I be if I put family pride above my children's well-being? The worst part, the thing that keeps me up at night even more than the sounds outside, is knowing that whoever buys this place will have no idea what they're getting into. Do we tell them? If we disclose what's been happening, the property becomes worthless. No one will buy it. We'll lose everything. But if we don't tell them, if we let another family move in blind, what happens to them? Do they go through everything we've gone through? Do their kids get traumatized like ours? These are the questions that keep me up at night on top of everything else. These are the impossible choices we're facing. There's no good answer. Every option leads to loss and pain and guilt. As I write this, we're still on the farm, still here, still hanging on by our fingernails. But we're barely functioning. We're not really living anymore. We're just surviving, day by day, hour by hour, waiting for something to happen or for us to find the strength to leave. The kids spend almost all their time inside now. We've stopped using half the property because it doesn't feel safe. The garden is abandoned, overgrown with weeds. The far pastures are empty, the fences falling down. We've sold off most of our remaining livestock because we can't protect them, and we can't stand to find another one dead. The farm is dying around us, and we're dying with it. We've installed better locks on every door and window, multiple deadbolts, security chains, motion sensor lights cover every approach to the house, though they go off so constantly now that we've learned to ignore them. We've stopped investigating every alarm because they're almost always nothing, or at least nothing we can see. The lights flash on and off all night, every night, lighting up empty yards, or yards that look empty. I patrol the property every night with my rifle. I check the same spots over and over, walking the same routes, looking for signs of them. I do this until sunrise, until I physically can't stay awake anymore. I'm exhausted all the time. My hands shake. I can barely concentrate on anything, but I can't stop. The patrol is the only thing that makes me feel like I'm doing something, like I'm protecting my family even though I know deep down I'm not. The strange thing is we haven't seen the creatures in a few days. Not since we started seriously talking about leaving, since we contacted the realtor and started packing boxes. The activity has dropped off almost completely, and I don't know if that's better or worse. Is it over? Are they gone? Did they somehow sense we're preparing to leave and decide to back off? Or are they just watching, waiting, knowing they've already won? Every sound still makes me jump. Every shadow is suspect. I find myself staring at the tree line for hours, waiting for movement, waiting for them to show themselves again. The fear has become a part of me now, woven into who I am. I don't think it'll go away even after we leave. I don't think I'll ever feel truly safe again, not completely. These things have broken something in me that can't be fixed. Looking back at everything that's happened, it's hard to believe this is our life now. 5 years ago, we were so excited to take over this farm from my parents. It was going to be our forever home. The place where our kids grew up, where we built our dreams, where we'd grow old together watching sunsets from the porch. It was supposed to be paradise, our own little corner of heaven. Now it's a nightmare. Now it's a place where we live in constant fear, where our children are traumatized, where every day is a struggle just to maintain some semblance of normalcy. The dream died somewhere along the way, killed by something that shouldn't exist but does. I never believed in Bigfoot before this started. I thought people who claimed to see them were either lying for attention or mistaken about what they'd seen. I thought the whole thing was nonsense, urban legends and campfire stories. I was completely, utterly wrong. They're real. They exist. I've seen them with my own eyes, multiple times, in good light, close enough to see details. And they're territorial in a way that makes them genuinely dangerous to humans who encroach on their space. If you're reading this and you start seeing signs like we did, please, I'm begging you, take them seriously. Don't ignore the footprints or rationalize them away as bear tracks. Don't dismiss the sounds as wind or tree branches. Don't tell yourself the strange smells are normal. Trust your instincts. Trust your animals when they act afraid. Trust the feeling you get when you know something is watching you from the woods. Don't wait until it escalates like we did. Don't convince yourself you can handle it or that it'll pass. These creatures are intelligent, patient, and territorial. They don't give up and they don't forget. If they decide your property is part of their territory, they will make your life hell until you leave. And the longer you wait, the worse it gets, the more dangerous it becomes. I keep wondering if we should have left sooner, if we'd abandoned the farm after the first few incidents, after I saw that creature in the woods that first morning. Would we have saved ourselves all this trauma? Would my kids be sleeping peacefully in their own beds instead of huddled on our floor? Would my wife still smile the way she used to, without that haunted look in her eyes? Maybe things will calm down now that we're leaving. Maybe the creatures will back off completely once we're gone and let the next owners have peace. Maybe this will all just become a bad memory, a story we tell in hushed voices years from now when people ask why we left the farm. But I don't believe that anymore. I think once they mark a territory as theirs, it stays theirs. I think the next family who moves here will go through everything we went through, maybe worse. I think this is their land, has always been their land. We were naive to think we could just move in and take it over, naive to think the wilderness belonged to us just because we had a deed and a fence line. The Bigfoot were here first. This is their home. We were the intruders, the invaders, the ones who didn't belong. And they made sure we understood that. Every sound in the night brings back the fear. The snap of a branch somewhere in the darkness, the call of an owl from the woods, the wind moving through the trees making that rushing sound. None of it sounds innocent anymore. Everything is a potential threat. Everything could be them, watching, waiting, planning their next move. I'm writing this partly as a warning to others, but also as a record. If something happens to us before we can get out, if we disappear like other people have disappeared in these remote areas, maybe someone will find this and understand what happened. Maybe it'll help the next family who moves here if we're foolish enough to sell without disclosure. Maybe someone will learn from our mistakes. We're hoping we can hold on long enough to finalize the sale and move, to get our family somewhere safe, to give our kids a chance at a normal childhood again. But every day that hope fades a little more. Every night that I patrol the property with my rifle, every shadow I investigate, every sound I can't explain, I wonder if this will be the night something finally happens. The night they stop just watching and harassing us and decide to do something worse. I know deep down we can't stay much longer. We've already stayed too long, put our family through too much, risked too much for the sake of pride and heritage. The question isn't if we'll leave anymore. It's whether we'll leave before something terrible happens, before someone gets hurt, before we're not given a choice. This farm was supposed to be our dream, our legacy to pass down to our kids and their kids. Instead, it's become a prison, a place where we're trapped by fear and the knowledge that we can't protect our family here. The Bigfoot that have taken over our lives, that have stolen our peace and our children's innocence, are probably still out there right now, still in the woods around the property, still watching our house, still waiting, still marking their territory. They've won. They drove us out. We're leaving our home, our heritage, everything we built, because we can't coexist with them. And the worst part is knowing that we never had a chance. From the moment they decided this was their territory, from the moment they marked those boundaries in the woods, our fate was sealed. We just didn't know it yet. We've started packing, made offers on a house in town, told the kids we're moving somewhere safer, somewhere they can play outside again. They're excited, relieved, already starting to act more like themselves. My wife has stopped crying every day. There's hope again, fragile but real. We're getting out. We're escaping. But I know I'll never really leave this place behind. The fear will follow me. The memories will haunt me. The knowledge that these creatures exist, that they're territorial and intelligent and dangerous, will color everything I do for the rest of my life. I'll never look at a forest the same way. I'll never feel safe in rural areas. I'll never stop listening for wood knocks in the darkness or looking for massive footprints in the mud. They didn't just take our farm. They took our innocence, our sense of security, our belief that we understood the world we lived in. They proved that there are things out there in the wilderness that we don't understand, that we can't control, that we can't coexist with. And once you know that, once you've seen it with your own eyes, you can never unknow it. So we're leaving, running away if I'm honest with myself, abandoning everything my family built because something bigger and stronger and older than us decided we didn't belong there, and we didn't. That's the truth I've finally accepted. We never belonged there. It was never really our land. We were just squatters in someone else's territory, and eventually the real owners made us leave. The Bigfoot won, we lost. And somewhere in those woods right now, they're probably watching our house, waiting for us to finally leave, ready to reclaim every inch of what was always theirs. For more interesting stories, check this out.